Hi, I'm Daz, I'm the producer of Adrift, and today I've been taking the edit forward in terms of the scene breakdown. So, as before we discussed about how each scene is like a story in its own right, the next thing then is to put those scenes together. Sounds kind of obvious, but it's only when you put them together you kind of see how they connect, and some things are obvious, like repetition of certain things or certain actions, certain sequences, and sometimes you find out things that don't make sense, or things are revealed too early. And although the film currently stands at about sort of an hour and 3/4 to 2 hours, it's taken about 8 hours to actually to go through the whole film. And the reason being is because I've been doing several different things. So a while back I sort of mentioned about how you log your clips, and how Sue has been doing that for the 4,500 clips that we have in the Drift, certainly if for principal photography, never mind all the documentary stuff. And then that's then broken down obviously into scenes, and what I've done today is divide up all of those scenes separately. So the first thing we kind of have is this sort of sheet here, which is all quite dull to look at from your point of view, but from my point of view it's essential. And what it is basically a single line for each scene. So it goes from 1 obviously all the way to 105, although there are actually more scenes than that because there are sort of A's, B's and C's, but for each one, and then it basically explains where it takes place, roughly what happens in that scene in literally 6 to 10 words, whether it's been logged, and any issues about it. So if it's absolutely connected to another scene, or it was filmed at the same time as another scene, stuff like that. And then what I've done is sort of gone through that to start with, and then sort of seen where scenes are connected, and immediately noted them down. Because what we're trying to create really is something that I kind of call sort of simultaneous storytelling. What does that mean? Well, it means that in films it's often the case that it's not quite linear, where this happens and this happens and this happens. It's often the case that it starts off linear and then it sort of branches out, and several things are happening at the same time, and you as the audience sort of cut across each of those things. And the order in which you cut across is very important, because every minute into the film that you're watching, you know more about what's going on, or there are more questions sort of given to you. So it's really important about when you cut across those things, but also in terms of an edit it's important, because it can speed up the pace if you want it to do that, and it can make something that's almost dull quite interesting, dull but important. And that's the thing about in movies, you should never have anything that's not interesting, but certainly if it's exposition, or it's something to explain how something else happens and you need to know, it's a very good way of doing that and cutting the passage of time as well. So for example, if a character has to walk from one end of the drift to the other end of the drift, rather than see them walk all the way across, you can see them start to walk, cut to something else, cut back, and you assume that now that the other end that they've obviously got across. That's a very simple way of looking at it, but imagine that on sort of several different character fronts. So that was the first thing, was look at that first log sheet. The next thing I then did was, going back to the original spreadsheet, was basically go through the whole spreadsheet, and there's quite a lot there, and basically what I've done is I've broken it down into every scene. So this is scene 3, and there are separate sheets. So that's all of scene 3 is just there, and then scene 5 is on a separate sheet. And the idea is that I can then take these sheets out alongside the script. There it is. That's the whole film. Take the scene that I'm looking at there, look at the sheet, or the couple of sheets for that scene there, and look how it connects with other scenes there, to then start looking at where I'm going to split that scene up, if indeed I am, or how I'm going to make it more exciting, or where the emphasis needs to be in that scene. And then just kind of join all that up, because that's easy to sort of look at and think, okay, well I know what I need to do there. Obviously then you need to write it down. So working with all of those, and also watching on the screen the movie as well, I've basically gone through the whole sort of film and made sort of notes on every single scene, certain actions, and some creative stuff as well, like some ADR, some dubbing that needs to be done, some external shots I might need to put into the film that I hadn't thought of before, and sort of going through the whole sequence of events, and the story gets more sort of complex, as it should do, building up into the sort of exciting conclusion at the end. So it's quite a lengthy process, and it's quite, actually, to be honest, it's quite tiring, which sounds a bit weird, because it's just sitting here watching stuff and writing stuff down, but you haven't to really think a lot about where things are going and what needs to be seen. And that's only a very basic level sort of thing, because now what you're kind of doing is you're grouping your scene into a group of several scenes, like a sequence. I'm not going to quite say an act, because it's not as big as that, but certainly you might have a sort of a milestone in a film where all the crew are here, and then they all have to be here at this second milestone. But what happens in the middle is kind of simultaneous. So that becomes like a sort of like a pocket or a window of stuff that you can then sort of cut between the two, up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, depending on what type of feeling you're trying to generate. And I've sort of identified perhaps about 6 pockets of that kind of thing going on. Some of them are quite long, some of them are very, very short. Example of a really short one is you've got a guy talking to another guy on a radio. So you've got 2 different places, 2 things going on, and there's a connection between the 2. So occasionally they cross each other, and other times they don't. So there's quite a few sort of crossovers like that, and that's that one. So the other thing that's also been really useful is that I've been able to sort of look at any obvious continuity issues or anything we've missed completely. And there are a couple of things that have been missed, but actually very easy to get around, especially in a sci-fi movie. So a quick line of dialogue on a radio or something can literally tie up a whole pile of loose ends very, very quickly. Or you can show something. You can have a CGI shot that can show something rather than have it being said. So if it's to do with the spaceships or the drift or whatever. So by doing this, it's also exposed that as well. So that's really good. So the next thing I really need to do now, other than just edit and keep tidying up the edit and all that kind of stuff ready for its sort of next milestone for us, which is in September, which is when I need to really have a good cut ready for the VFX guys to actually start cracking on with specific shots and start logging those things, because that's when it'll really kick off. The next thing for me really I need to do is to get together with Sue, who wrote the script, and then us look at it together, and for her really to sort of advise me about what I can take out and what I need to keep in, because there's a few bits of dialogue that I think are really wishy-washy, and that's kind of for 2 reasons. One is because I don't know much about script writing, so that's why I have Sue, so she'll correct me quite quickly about that. And the other side of it is that there's just lots of talking and nothing else happening. So it's like, well, I need to break this up or get rid of the dialogue. So which one is it? Is it important to keep? If it's important to keep, then we need to try and tie this up with something else. We need to try and keep this going. Easy ways of doing that, music. And I'm not trying to say music is a waste of time, because it isn't. So what I'm saying is that if you just have to put some sort of music score on there, sometimes that's just it makes it more exciting, but is it the music that's exciting rather than the dialogue? Difficult one. So again, it's trying to balance that. Also, talking of music though, this is a really good time starting to look at what's called temp tracks, so a temporary score of music that I like, and the feelings that the music makes me feel when I listen to it, applied into the story, overlaid on the video clip, and then pushed out to the guys that need to see it, and explaining why that music works. And now, because you've got scenes next to each other, the music can flow into each scene, so that's also handy. So it's really kind of we've really moved past the sort of technical aspect of sort of just putting the scenes together to see what happens, to actually going right back to the initial concept of the movie and the story, you know, of what you're meant to feel and what you're meant to see, rather than just the sticking of it all together. So that's a really sort of good place, a good sort of milestone to be at, and I think that will then start to accelerate production, but it'll also start to highlight all the separate elements that we now need to start addressing, and we couldn't really have addressed until this sort of stage. So that's a good place to be. So we'll see what happens next. That's it. I'm gonna watch the movie again. Oh, but you can't watch it, so yeah.